A very good afternoon to our viewers here and around the world. We thank you for joining us on Business Incorporated. I am Bosin Amafaye live from Channel's headquarters in Lagos. Let's get started. The Dubai-based Abraj Group announces the formation of a dedicated project development arm to further extend its investment capabilities in the energy infrastructure space. Nestle Nigeria posts positive 105.4 billion revenue in 2015, plus Uber seeks to lure cabbies in Africa expansion plan, but there are contentions in Kenya. Let's talk about the rest of the programming. The Frankfurt Stock Exchange, or the Deutsche Börse, and the London Stock Exchange Group PLC have agreed to merge, a deal that would create a titan of European trading as long as rival suitors don't append the agreement and regulators give it their blessings. LSE's equity holders will own 45.6% of the enlarged group, while Deutsche Börse stockholders will get the remaining 54.4%. The two companies announced on February 23rd that they were negotiating a deal. The companies are valued at $30.5 billion US. The companies predicted they will have cost savings or synergies of 450 million euros each year after the deal is completed. Let's track the Asian markets today. Mixed as investors waited for the outcome of the latest Federal Reserve meeting, or the FOMC. The U.S. Fed is expected to keep borrowing costs on hold, but its economic commentary will be closely scrutinized for hints about the Fed's future moves. In Japan, the benchmark Nikkei 225 index closed down 0.8%. In China, the Shanghai Composite Index rose 0.2%, while the Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was down 0.2%. South Korea's Kospi closed up 0.3%, despite data showing the unemployment rate in South Korea hit a 5-year high. Now we're down to the final hours of the U.S. Central Bank, or the Federal Reserve FOMC meeting. That's the big story today. All markets on hold. Wall Street futures on hold as we speak ahead of that meeting. Now let's track that story as well as other stories making the headlines across the European market. In particular, the planned merger between the London Stock Exchange and the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And there's no better way to go. Dance right to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange there with Javier Agüedes, who is DWTV business correspondent for Channels Television. Javier, a good afternoon to you. Let's talk about the marriage later on, but let's start with the FOMC. All eyes on Janet Yellen's Federal Reserve. Investors expecting hints, amount, and what the time frame for the U.S. interest hike will be. Talk to us on this.
Hi, Bosun. Yes, exactly. That is the most important piece of news, I would say, that we will expect in the coming hours, because all investors, of course, want to know whether there will be an interest rate hike anytime soon, and especially how many we will see this year. And that is probably the one point where we are seeing a little bit of division, because we know that many of the representatives of the U.S. Federal Reserve expect at least 3 different interest rate hikes this year, while investors are actually just counting on one. So that will be very interesting to see, and that's why it's not only about how the interest rate is going to be fixed, but especially about what lecture the Federal Reserve is going to do on the U.S. economy. That is probably going to be a very important and decisive factor.
Yes, will be what investors want to hear. That's the big story in the room. But let's get back to your market right there in Europe. The auto industry is getting strong. Even Volkswagen is seeing some growing figures. What's driving the European auto markets?
Well, what is driving the European market is, let's say, moderate growth in many of the European countries. As such, we are seeing growth in Germany and Spain and France, and that is reflecting in good auto sales. So we are seeing an overall increase of about 14% compared to last year. So that is definitely a good figure for the auto industry, and that is also being reflected in good numbers in many of the stock prices for car makers, at least here in Germany. Daimler, which we know for the Mercedes-Benz brand, BMW, and also Volkswagen, which registered a growth of 4%, which is, of course, less impressive than its competitors. That is an effect of the scandal. But all in all, at least it is an increase in sales, and that is good news for the company that is struggling, as you know, with the effects of the Dieselgate scandal.
Yes, so we're down to the corporate wedlock between the London Stock Exchange and your stock exchange, where you're standing right there, Javier. What are the wedding plans for the LSE and the Deutsche Börse?
Well, at this stage, we know that both parties have agreed on the terms of how this merger would look like. It is being presented as, as a merger of equals, but we do know that the shareholders of the Deutsche Börse Group, which is the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, will have a little bit of a higher percentage of 54% so far. So there will be a little bit more control on this side. The company, however, will be set in London. That is interesting, especially because we do not know whether the voting for those shareholders were take place before or after the referendum on a possible exit of the UK from the European Union. So those are things that still are on the table, and also, of course, the approval of antitrust authorities. That is going to be a difficult task because it will become a mega power in the stock markets in Europe.
Yes, it looks like something that will happen tomorrow, but there's still a lot of hurdles to cross before getting to the altar. Thank you very much, Javier Guedes. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you again tomorrow, Thursday, the 17th of March. Let's leave it there for now. Frankfurt Stock Exchange, DWTV financial correspondent Javier Guedes there for Channels Television. Let's go back after the break. Nigeria's largest food company, Nestle, has announced a positive earnings for 2015. What's driving sales and other growth in Nestle Nigeria? Well, that's the story we're starting with after this break.